you originally shared. Part 1, The Young King's Resolve. Alexander's story began as a tale of destiny. Born to King Philip II of Macedon, Alexander was raised to lead, even as a young child. His father had already begun expanding the Macedonian Empire, but upon his untimely assassination, Alexander was thrust into the role of king at just 20 years old. With a steely determination, Alexander quickly united his kingdom, suppressing any threats to his throne. His military genius began to shine as he strengthened his army and immediately set his sights on the mighty Persian Empire to the east. His first challenge came when he led his forces to the river Granicus, where he faced a formidable Persian army. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander's tactical brilliance on the battlefield stunned his enemies. In a surprising move, he charged into the thick of the battle, his sword flashing like a lightning bolt. The Persian forces, shocked by his audacity, faltered. The Macedonian army won a decisive victory, and Alexander's name was now etched into the annals of history. But this victory was merely the beginning. Dark forces were gathering, and the real battle for his empire was about to begin. In English. Part 2. The War with the Persian Empire. Following his success at Granicus, Alexander's eyes turned toward the heart of the Persian Empire, King Darius III. Darius was a powerful monarch, and the Persian army, with its vast numbers, posed a serious threat. However, Alexander was never one to back down from an impossible challenge. His next major test came to him at the Battle of Issus, where Darius himself led his forces against Alexander's smaller but more disciplined army. The battlefield was a landscape of chaos, as cavalry clashed and infantry pressed forward with fierce intensity. At the heart of the battle, Alexander broke through the Persian lines with a daring charge aimed at Darius's position. Darius, realizing the impending defeat, fled the battlefield, leaving his army in disarray. But Alexander's triumph was bittersweet. As Darius fled, Alexander knew the Persian king would not give up easily. A far greater challenge awaited him in the future, one that would test his resolve like never before. Part 3. The Siege of Tyre. After his victory at Issus, Alexander turned his attention to Tyre, a fortified city on an island. The city was famous for its powerful walls and maritime strength, making it seemingly impervious to siege. But Alexander was known for his unconventional tactics, and he was not about to be thwarted by a mere city. The Siege of Tyre began with Alexander's construction of a massive causeway extending from the mainland to the island. The Tyrians, initially confident in their defences, soon realised the dire situation they were in. For months, Alexander's forces worked tirelessly, facing attacks from the sea and desperate resistance from the defenders of Tyre. As the causeway neared completion, Alexander's forces launched a full-scale assault on the city. With his army battering down the gates, the Tyrians fought back fiercely, but the siege's tension had reached a boiling point. On the night of the final assault, the streets of Tyre ran red with blood, and the city fell. But Alexander's victory was overshadowed by a chilling realization. The fall of Tyre had come at a cost, and darker forces were beginning to gather in the east, or in English. Part 4. The Battle of Gaugamela. Alexander's triumphs had made him the undisputed ruler of much of Asia Minor, but the ultimate challenge awaited him, the Persian Empire itself. King Darius, humiliated by his earlier defeats, gathered an enormous army at Gaugamela in an attempt to finally crush Alexander's growing empire. The battlefield was massive, with the Persian army outnumbering Alexander's by more than 3-1. But Alexander's mind was as sharp as his sword. As the battle began, he immediately noticed Darius' command structure was vulnerable. With lightning speed, Alexander struck the heart of the Persian line, his cavalry slashing through the enemy's ranks. Darius, realizing the tide had turned, fled once again, leaving his soldiers to be slaughtered. But this time, the consequences of his escape were dire. Alexander's forces swept through the Persian army, and by sunset, the empire was shattered. Yet, despite his victory, Alexander was left with a haunting thought. Was the end of Darius really the end of his struggle?
Part 5. The March to India and Return. English translation of Urdu version. When the Persian Empire came under Alexander's control, his gaze shifted eastward to the mystical land of India. His ambitions knew no limits, and his army continued to advance, crossing rivers and mountains, enduring blistering deserts, and fighting through harsh conditions. When Alexander finally reached the banks of the Indus River, he encountered a brave and powerful opponent, King Porus. The battle was intense, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. However, Alexander's army once again emerged victorious, pushing Porus back and establishing his rule over the region. Despite these continuous victories, Alexander's soldiers were exhausted. They longed to return home, tired of endless wars. Eventually, Alexander, though reluctant, decided to turn back, abandoning his dreams of further conquest in the east. During the return journey, Alexander's health began to fail. At just 32 years of age, in the city of Babylon, the world's greatest conqueror succumbed to illness. After his death, his vast empire began to fragment, yet his legacy echoed through the ages. Moral of the story: Alexander's life teaches us that true greatness lies not just in military strength, but in vision, courage, and the pursuit of dreams. His story reminds us that no challenge is too great for those who have the will to overcome it, and that even in death, a true legend never fades.